पेरल्या पाहिजेत सक्षमपणे, जेणेकरून संक्रमणाचं वाढतं हे भयावह स्वरूप जे आपल्याला दिसतंय, त्याच्यावर आपल्याला काही प्रमाणात चांगल्या पद्धतीनं नियंत्रण आणता येईल. यासाठी आम्ही आपल्या डिस्ट्रिक्ट टास्क फोर्स जे आहे कोविडचं, जसं स्टेट टास्क फोर्स आहे तसं आपलं जिल्ह्याचं एक टास्क फोर्स आपण स्थापन केलेलं आहे. याच्यामध्ये मेडिकल कॉलेजचे काही फॅकल्टीज आहेत आणि प्रायव्हेट प्रॅक्टिशनर पैकी काही लोक त्यांचं आपापल्या क्षेत्रामध्ये चांगलं योगदान आहे आणि त्या विषयातलं त्यांचं ज्ञान चांगलं आहे. अशा लोकांना आम्ही या टास्क फोर्स समितीचे सदस्य बनवलेलं आहे. याच्यामध्ये आज आपल्या इथं मेडिकल कॉलेजच्या डॉक्टर प्रिया प्रभू या प्रिव्हेंटिव्ह अँड सोशल मेडिसिनच्या सहयोगी प्राध्यापिका आहेत आणि त्यांचं आपल्याला एक आज काही चांगल्या पद्धतीच्या एक टॉपिक त्यांना दिलेला आहे, त्याच्यावर त्या बोलतील. त्याच्यानंतर डॉक्टर आनंद मालानी आहे, जे MD मेडिसिन आहेत, सांगलीमध्ये प्रॅक्टिस आहे त्यांची आणि अकॅडमिकली अतिशय अपडेटेड अशी व्यक्ती आहे. त्याचबरोबर डॉक्टर अविनाश झळके आहेत, जे क्रांती कार्डियक सेंटरमध्ये कन्सल्टंट म्हणून काम करतात. MD मेडिसिन आहेत, पण इंटेन्सिव्हिस्ट म्हणून त्यांचा सहभाग जरा जास्त मोठा आहे. त्यांचंही त्यांच्या विषयातलं ज्ञान चांगलं आहे. आणि डॉक्टर सोमनाथ मगदूम थोड्या वेळात जॉईन होतील. ते पण सहयोगी प्राध्यापक आहेत मेडिसिन विभागामध्ये, शासकीय वैद्यकीय महाविद्यालय मिरज येथे. या सगळ्यांचं मार्गदर्शन आणि तुम्हाला तुमचा रोल चांगल्या पद्धतीनं आयडेंटिफाय करून देणं आणि त्याप्रमाणे तुम्ही वाटचाल करणं, असा काहीसा या मीटिंगचा हेतू आहे. डॉक्टर अरुण कोळी हे GP फोरमचे अध्यक्ष आहेत, त्यांना मी कोऑर्डिनेट करत आहे आणि त्याचबरोबर निमाचे प्रेसिडेंट मला वाटते बरगाले आहेत. या दोघांना मी कोऑर्डिनेट करून आपल्यापर्यंत हा मेसेज पोहोचवायला सांगितलेला आहे. त्याप्रमाणे आपली उपस्थिती लक्षणीय आहे, त्याबद्दल मी सर्वांचं पहिल्यांदा स्वागत करतो. आणि यातला पहिला टॉपिक जो आहे डॉक्टर प्रभू मॅडमचा, त्यांना मी त्यांचा टॉपिक चालू करण्यासाठी विनंती करतो.
धन्यवाद सर. स्लाइड शेअर. नमस्कार. या साथीच्या रोगामध्ये जसं विषाणूची संख्या खूप जास्ती आहे, तशीच आपल्या सर्वांची संख्या देखील खूप जास्त असणं आवश्यक आहे. कारण आपण जर एकत्रितपणे प्रयत्न केले तर आणि तरच ही साथ थांबू शकते. 2021 हे जे वर्ष आहे, 2021 जे वर्ष आहे, हे वर्ष आपण होपनी चालू केलं होतं. सगळ्यांना वाटलं होतं की 2020 मध्ये आपल्याला खूप त्रास झाला आणि 21 हे चांगल्या प्रकारे जाईल. पण
मॅडमचा आवाज सगळ्यांना व्यवस्थित ऐकू येतोय का? एखाद्यानं सांगावं.
येस सर, येस सर.
ओके, थँक्यू.
येस सर.
थँक्यू. पण यावर्षी अशी परिस्थिती आली आहे की तुम्ही जर हे चित्र बघितलं तर तुमच्या लक्षात येईल की भारताची पहिली वेव्ह किती होती आणि आता दुसऱ्या वेव्हला हे 23 एप्रिलचं चित्र आहे. तेव्हा तरी कमी होत्या केसेस आणि आता आपण 3 लाख 4 लाख असे आकडे क्रॉस केले. त्यामुळं परिस्थिती अशी असल्याने प्रत्येकाने प्रयत्न करणं अतिशय आवश्यक आहे आणि जर आपण प्रयत्न केले तर कोरोनाला हरवता येणं शक्य आहे, हे आपल्याला लक्षात ठेवायला पाहिजे. यासाठी ब्रेक द चेन ही जी आपल्याला महाराष्ट्र सरकारने आपल्याला हे जे दिलेलं आहे थीम यावेळी, यामध्ये आता वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारे आपण काम करू शकतो. तर त्याच्यामध्ये रुग्णाशी संबंधित जे आहे, संसर्ग झाल्यास अलगीकरण, आयसोलेशन आणि लक्षण सुरू झालं की लगेच तपासणी. कारण आपल्याला हे ओळखायचंय की हा व्हायरस नक्की कुठं लपून बसलेला आहे आणि त्याचं जे रिझर्वायर असतं, रिझर्वायर हे रुग्ण असतात आणि रुग्णांच्या शरीरामध्ये व्हायरस असल्यामुळे आपल्याला लवकरात लवकर व्हायरस लपलेली जागा शोधणं हे अतिशय आवश्यक असतं. मिस्टर किरण लिमये यांनी वेगवेगळ्या जिल्ह्यांसाठी R कॅल्क्युलेट केलेलं आहे. R म्हणजे तुम्हाला माहिती आहे की जेव्हा R 1 पेक्षा वर असतं तेव्हा साथ वाढणारी असते आणि याच्यामध्ये सांगली ही 1 पेक्षा जास्त R आहे आणि आपल्याकडच्या केसेस ह्या सध्या वाढणाऱ्या आहेत. आपल्याला लवकरात लवकर R 1 पेक्षा खाली आणायचंय. याचा अर्थ काय? एक रुग्ण बाधित झाल्यानंतर तर जर त्या एका रुग्णापासून एकाहून अधिक व्यक्ती बाधित झाली, पुढे सरकला नाही आजार, तर आणि तरच ही साथ थांबू शकते. आणि हे करण्यासाठी आपल्या सर्वांना एकत्रित प्रयत्न करायला पाहिजेत. आता आपण असं म्हणू शकतो की देशाचं जरी चित्र थोडंसं अवघड वाटत असलं तरी महाराष्ट्रासाठी केसेस ह्या थोड्या स्टॅबिलाइज झालेल्या आहेत. म्हणजे आपण जर अजून जोर लावला, अजून आपण आयडेंटिफाय केलं की नक्की कुठे आपण लवकरात लवकर रुग्ण शोधू शकतो, तर आपल्याला फरक करता येईल. आणि आपल्या सर्वांना हे माहितीये की आजार हा आपण वैद्यकीय जे क्षेत्रामध्ये आपण काम करतो, आपण आणि रुग्ण ह्याच्यामध्ये रुग्ण आणि व्हायरस याच्यामध्ये फक्त आपणच आहोत. आणि आपण जो निर्णय घेऊ, आपण जो सल्ला देऊ, आपण जे सांगू रुग्णाला, त्यांनी त्या रुग्णाचं आयुष्य, त्या कुटुंबाचं पुढचं भविष्य आणि सगळ्या गोष्टी ह्या बदलू शकतात. तर ब्रेक द चेन करण्यासाठी आज मला बोलण्यासाठी विषय दिलाय अर्ली RT-PCR आणि अर्ली आयसोलेशन. मग हे अर्ली काय आहे हे आपण आज बघूया. तर आज आपण सर्वजण एकत्र जमलोय ह्याचं महत्वाचं कारण आहे की या साथीमध्ये तुम्हा सर्वांचं महत्व खूप आहे. आणि त्याचं कारण आहे की तुम्हीच रुग्णाचे फर्स्ट कॉन्टॅक्ट असता. रुग्णांचा तुमच्यावर खूप भरपूर विश्वास असतो. तुम्ही फॅमिलीसाठी केअर करत असता, त्यामुळे सर्वांची काळजी तुम्ही घेऊ शकता. तुम्ही अशा ठिकाणी आहात की अर्ली डायग्नोसिस हे शक्य आहे. कारण जोपर्यंत रुग्ण हा मोठ्या दवाखान्यात किंवा स्पेशालिटी सेंटरला पोहोचतो, तोपर्यंत त्याच्यामध्ये गंभीर आजार हा ऑलरेडी सुरू झालेला असतो. मगच तो पुढे येतो आणि त्यावेळेला आपण जास्त काही करू शकत नाही. त्यामुळं तुम्ही जे आता निर्णय घ्याल याच्यावर साथ पुढे कशी जाईल हे महत्वाचं आहे. तुम्ही बेस्ट काउन्सिलर असता. तुम्ही रुग्णांची भीती घालवू शकता, त्यांना समजावून सांगू शकता, त्यांचे गैरसमज दूर करू शकता. आणि गैरसमज हा या साथीमधला सगळ्यात मोठा भाग आहे. आपण एका साथीला नाही लढत आहोत, आपण एकाच वेळेला 2 साथींशी लढत आहोत. एक आहे कोविडची साथ आणि दुसरी आहे व्हॉट्सअप मधनं पसरणाऱ्या सगळ्या गैरसमजांची साथ. आणि हे गैरसमज फक्त रुग्णांमध्ये नाहीयेत, हे गैरसमज बऱ्याचशा डॉक्टर व्यक्तींमध्ये सुद्धा आहेत. उदाहरणार्थ एक RT-PCR बद्दल एक फॉरवर्ड फिरलं होतं की ज्याच्यामध्ये सांगितलं होतं WHO म्हणतीये की RT-PCR चांगली टेस्ट नाही, त्यांनी काही समजत नाही. पण ही बातमी होती, त्याचं मूळ जर डॉक्युमेंट बघितलं तर त्याचा कम्प्लिटली वेगळा अर्थ होत होता. त्यामुळे असे गैरसमज न पसरणं हे सध्यासाठी फार महत्वाचं आहे. सेकंड वेव्ह मधला पिक्चर खूप विचित्र आहे. खूप जास्त ट्रान्समिशन होतंय, अख्ख्या फॅमिलीज अफेक्ट होत आहेत, लवकर पेशंट डिटोरिएट होत आहेत, यंग पेशंट मध्ये पण अफेक्शन आहे जास्ती. आणि न्यू व्हेरियंट हे पसरवत असल्यामुळे त्याच्याबद्दल आपल्याला अजून अभ्यास करणं आवश्यक आहे. आणि तसंच ग्रामीण भाग हा शहरी भागांपेक्षा अधिक जास्त प्रमाणामध्ये अफेक्ट होतोय. आणि ग्रामीण भागामध्ये आपल्यासारखेच सर्व डॉक्टर्स हे उपलब्ध असतात. ग्रामीण भागासाठी हे का महत्वाचं आहे? कारण आता सध्या रुग्णांची वाढती संख्या ही मुख्यतः ग्रामीण भागात आहे, जिथं अपुऱ्या सुविधा आहेत, आजार लपवण्याकडे कल असल्यामुळे रुग्ण लगेच गंभीर होतात, भेदाभेद असतो, कलंक असतो, त्यामुळे पण लोक लपवतात. भीतीचा पगडा खूप जास्ती आहे. मास्कवर बिलकुल भरोसा नाहीये कुणाचा. वैद्यक शास्त्रावर पण अविश्वास आहे, कारण सगळ्यांना काढ्यावर जास्त विश्वास आहे. आणि ते सुद्धा म्हणजे वैद्यांच्या गायडन्स खाली नाही, ते त्यांच्या लेवललाच व्हॉट्सअपवरनं काहीतरी करतात. व्यवस्थित डॉक्टरांकडनं सल्ला घेऊन केला तर वेगळी गोष्ट आहे. व्हॉट्सअप फॉरवर्डवर विश्वास आहे आणि तिथले समाज जीवन वेगळं आहे, त्यामुळे सण समारंभ वगैरे सगळं जाणं करणं हे त्यांना कंपल्सरी वाटतं. मग या ठिकाणी आपण काय करू शकतो? तर RT-PCR नक्की कधी करायची याच्याबद्दल पण थोडासा गैरसमज वैद्यकीय क्षेत्रामध्ये झाला की लक्षण आल्यानंतर पण बऱ्याच वैद्यकीय व्यक्तींनी काही दिवस थांबायला पाहिजे असे सल्ले दिले. पण हे लक्षात घ्या, जर हे चित्र तुम्ही लक्षात घेतलं तर 0 आकडा जो दिसतोय त्या ठिकाणी लक्षण सुरू झालेलं आहे. म्हणजे तिथं रुग्णाचा आजार हा जाणवतोय, ताप आलाय, खोकला आलाय, सर्दी आली, थकवा आली, कुठलं ना कुठलं लक्षण आलेलं आहे. तर ते लक्षण जेव्हा येतं त्याच वेळेला त्याच्या शरीरामध्ये खूप अधिक व्हायरस असतो. आणि आपल्याला माहित आहे की लक्षण सुरू व्हायच्या 2 दिवस आधी ऑलरेडी हा आजार पसरवायला सुरुवात झालेली असते. त्यामुळे हे लक्षात घ्या की त्याच्या 2 दिवस आधी आणि त्यानंतर पहिल्या 2-3 दिवसामध्ये रुग्णाच्या शरीरामध्ये व्हायरस भरपूर असतो. त्यामुळे RT-PCR करण्यासाठी आपल्याला थांबायची बिलकुल गरज नाहीये किंवा कुठलीही टेस्ट करण्यासाठी आपल्याला थांबायची गरज नाहीये. लक्षण आलं की लगेच आपल्याला तपासणी करता येते आणि त्याच्यामध्ये जे काही निर्णय येईल तो आपण विश्वास ठेवू शकतो. हे दुसरं चित्र देखील तुम्हाला समजून घेण्यासाठी कामाला येईल. याच्यामध्ये जो इन्फेक्शियस पिरियड आहे तिथे आजाराचं मुख्य लक्षणं असतात. त्या काळामध्ये अँटीजेन टेस्ट देखील पॉझिटिव्ह येते आणि तुमच्या लक्षात येईल की RT-PCR टेस्ट ही अँटीजेन टेस्टच्या आधीच पॉझिटिव्ह येण्याची शक्यता आहे. त्यामुळे आपल्याला थोडासा विंडो पिरियड जे आपल्याला करायचंय, लवकरात लवकर विषाणूला शोधायचंय, ते काम करणं हे RT-PCR अतिशय चांगल्या प्रकारे होऊ शकते. त्यामुळे रुग्णाला कोणत्याही प्रकारचं लक्षण आलं तर आपण त्याला RT-PCR करायला सांगणार आहोत. कोविड सदृश लक्षण आलं तर आपण सांगणारच आहोत, पण याखेरीज देखील सध्याच्या लाटेमध्ये असं लक्षात येतंय की जे सिम्पटम आहेत ते कधी कधी सर्दी, खोकला, वास जाणे किंवा चव जाणे अशा प्रकारचे न दिसता कधी कधी जुलाब किंवा इतर प्रकारचे देखील दिसत आहेत. त्यामुळं आजारी असेल व्यक्ती तर त्यांना कोविड नाहीये ना हे कन्फर्म करण्यासाठी आपण टेस्ट करणं हे अतिशय चांगलं आहे. कारण जर पहिल्या आठवड्यातच आपल्याला आजार कळला तर आपण त्याप्रमाणे योग्य ते निर्णय रुग्णावर लक्ष ठेवणे आणि गंभीर अगदी 50-60 SpO2 होईपर्यंत रुग्ण त्यानंतर O2 बेड शोधायला चालू करतो, ते टाळणं शक्य आहे. मग टेस्ट कुठली करायची? प्रेफरेबली आपण म्हणतो की सिम्पटम असतील तर RT-PCR करायला पाहिजे. कधी अर्जंट रिझल्ट हवा असेल तर रॅट करायला पाहिजे. पण आता ICMR जे नवीन गाईडलाईन आलेलं आहे त्यानुसार लवकर रिझल्ट आपल्याला मिळतो, यासाठी आपल्याला रॅट टेस्ट देखील करण्याची परमिशन मिळालेली आहे. फक्त एक लक्षात ठेवा, सिम्पटम असताना रॅट निगेटिव्ह आली तर अशा वेळेला आपल्याला RT-PCR कन्फर्म करणं आवश्यक आहे. कारण मगासच्या चित्रामध्ये तुमच्या लक्षात आलं असेल की काही रुग्ण सुटू शकतात, तर त्यामुळं RT-PCR आपल्याला कन्फर्म करायचंय जर त्या व्यक्तीला सिम्पटम असतील तर. मग रॅट निगेटिव्ह आपण विश्वास नाही ठेवणार. मात्र रॅट पॉझिटिव्ह आली किंवा RT-PCR पॉझिटिव्ह आली अशा वेळेला आपल्याला त्या टेस्टवर पूर्ण विश्वास ठेवायचा आहे. बऱ्याचदा रुग्ण काय करतात की अरे मला तर काय त्रास नाही आणि कस काय टेस्ट पॉझिटिव्ह आली म्हणून रॅट पॉझिटिव्ह आली तरी ते इकडे तिकडे फिरतात, परत RT-PCR, परत दुसरीकडे टेस्ट, असे प्रयोग करतात. तर ही टेस्ट एकदा पॉझिटिव्ह आली, कोणतीही रॅट किंवा RT-PCR, त्याच्यावर विश्वास ठेवायचा. रुग्ण सिम्पटमॅटिक आहे, त्याचं वय किती आहे, कोमॉर्बिडिटी आहे का, यानुसार त्याचं ग्रेडिंग करायचं आणि मग जसं त्याला जो काही सल्ला द्यायचा असेल, होम आयसोलेशन किंवा हॉस्पिटल, त्यानुसार आपण सल्ला देऊ शकतो. रुग्णांना तुम्ही सांगू शकता की असिम्पटमॅटिक पॉझिटिव्ह येणं हे शक्य आहे. RT-PCR ही टेस्ट HIV बाबतीमध्ये आपण किती विश्वास ठेवतो, बाकी काही नाही तर लगेच 7 दिवसामध्ये ती पॉझिटिव्ह येऊ शकते. मग या आजारामध्ये ती टेस्ट तर वाईट होणार नाही. त्यामुळं RT-PCR पॉझिटिव्ह आली तरी देखील विश्वास ठेवायचा, असिम्पटमॅटिक असाल तरी देखील विश्वास ठेवायचा, कारण या आजारामध्ये 80% रुग्ण हे असिम्पटमॅटिकच असणार आहेत. त्यामुळे त्यांच्यामध्ये सिम्पटम कधीच येणार नाहीत, पण ते खरेच पॉझिटिव्ह असतील. त्यामुळे हा एक सल्ला तुम्ही रुग्णांना व्यवस्थित द्या. मग अर्ली आयसोलेशनचा काय रोल आहे? पुन्हा एकदा ह्या चित्राकडे जाऊया. आपण हे बघितलंय की जेव्हा व्हायरल लोड सगळ्यात जास्ती असतो त्या काळामध्ये हा आजार पसरतो आणि या लाटेमध्ये कुटुंबाच्या कुटुंब पॉझिटिव्ह येतात. कारण जोपर्यंत RT-PCRचा रिपोर्ट येत नाही, एक तर रुग्ण पहिल्या दिवशी तुमच्याकडे पोहोचत नाही, तुमच्याकडे यायला त्यांनी 2-3 दिवस वाया घालवलेले असतात. त्यानंतर ते म्हणतात की नाही आम्हाला टेस्ट नाही करायची, आम्हाला आता तुम्ही नुसती औषधं द्या. मग पुन्हा त्याच्यामध्ये 2-3 दिवस जाऊ शकतात. त्यामुळे आता रुग्णाला हवं तसं आपण वागण्याऐवजी जे त्याच्या कुटुंबासाठी चांगलं आहे, आपल्या राज्यासाठी आणि देशासाठी चांगलं आहे, ते आपल्याला करायचंय. आपल्याला शक्य असेल तर सिम्पटमच्या पहिल्या दिवशी किंवा रुग्ण तुमच्याकडे जर 2ऱ्या-3ऱ्या दिवशी पोहोचला तर त्याच दिवशी टेस्ट करायची. आणि हे लक्षात घ्या की सुरुवातीलाच व्हायरल लोड एवढा जास्ती आहे. एकदा अँटीबॉडी तयार झाल्या की व्हायरल लोड कमी व्हायला लागतो. त्यामुळे बऱ्याचदा 2ऱ्या आठवड्यामध्ये टेस्ट पॉझिटिव्ह पण येत नाही. आणि रुग्णाच्या हातात जर पॉझिटिव्ह टेस्ट नसेल तर जेव्हा त्याला O2 बेडची गरज पडते त्यावेळेला O2 बेड मिळणं फार अवघड होऊन जातं. त्यामुळे जर आधी आपण टेस्ट केली जेव्हा त्याला काहीच त्रास नाहीये, त्यावेळेला आपल्याकडे जर पॉझिटिव्ह टेस्टचा रिपोर्ट असेल तर नंतर जेव्हा O2 बेडची गरज चुकून पडलीच तर आपल्याला बेड मिळणं हे अतिशय सोपं जातं. त्यामुळं टेस्ट लवकर करायची आणि त्याचबरोबर एकदा सिम्पटम सुरू झालं की टेस्टचा रिझल्टची वाट बघत बसायचं नाहीये, आपल्याला आयसोलेशन सुरू करायचंय. मग त्यासाठी तुम्ही काय सल्ला देऊ शकता की आता लाट चालू असल्यामुळं कुठलाही आजार करोनामुळे असू शकेल, कारण आता सिम्पटम्स खूप वेगवेगळे येत आहेत. त्यामुळं असं आधी गृहीत धरायचं की हे करोना असू शकेल आणि त्या संदर्भात काळजी घ्यायला सुरुवात करायची. म्हणजे काय करायचं, त्या आजारी व्यक्तींनी घरामधला वावर कमी करायचा, त्यांनी कामावर जायचं नाही आणि स्वतःला घरामध्ये वेगळ्या खोलीमध्ये शक्य असेल तर किंवा इतरांपासून शक्य तेवढं दूर ठेवायचं आणि मास्कचा वापर घरामध्ये सुरू करायचा आजारी व्यक्तींनी, हे फार महत्वाचं आहे. त्यानंतर त्या व्यक्तीची काळजी, ज्याला जोखीम सगळ्यात कमी आहे अशा व्यक्तींना त्यांची काळजी घ्यायला लावायची. काळजी घेणाऱ्या व्यक्तीनं मास्क लावायचा आणि हातांची नीट स्वच्छता करायची. आणि करोना सदृश लक्षण असेल तर मात्र नक्की आणि वेळेवर तपासणी करायची. समजा त्याच्यामध्ये निगेटिव्ह टेस्ट आली तर आपण रिलॅक्स होतो. त्याच्यामध्ये पॉझिटिव्ह टेस्ट आली तर मग आपले जे नियम आहेत त्यानुसार त्यांना पुढचे सल्ले आपण देऊ शकतो. त्याचबरोबर पल्स ऑक्सिमीटर आणि 6 मिनिट वॉक टेस्टचा व्यवस्थित वापर करायचा. आणि वेळेवर जर आपला धोका लक्षात आला, सुरुवात गंभीरपणाची लक्षात आली, तर नक्कीच आपण रुग्णांचे मृत्यू टाळू शकतो. हे लक्षात घ्या, साथीमध्ये एक केस जरी आपण टाळू शकलो, म्हणजे एका रुग्णापासून तुम्ही पुढे न जाऊ देता एक जरी आपण प्रिव्हेन्शन केलं, तरी काही महिन्यानंतर किंवा काही आठवड्यानंतर साथीमध्ये बघा किती फरक पडतोय. फक्त 4 लोक आपण वाचवलेत, जास्त नाही, फक्त 4. पण ही साथ जेव्हा ती जवळपास एक 50-100 लोकांपर्यंत पोहोचू शकत होती, त्याच्याऐवजी कमी होऊन फक्त 10-20 लोकांपर्यंत गेलेली आहे. त्यामुळे आपण प्रत्येक केस थांबवण्यासाठी, प्रत्येक व्यक्तीचा संसर्ग टाळण्यासाठी प्रयत्न करूया. आणि कोणतीही टेस्ट ही लक्षणाच्या पहिल्या दिवशी करूया. आणि जर ती पॉझिटिव्ह आली तर त्याच्यावर विश्वास ठेवून त्यानुसार काम करूया. आणि आजारपण सुरू झालं कुणालाही तर घरामध्ये आयसोलेशन आणि मास्कचा वापर हा सुरू करायला सांगूया. बरेचसे फॉरवर्ड येतात किंवा काही गोष्टी लक्षात येत नाहीत, काही कन्सेप्ट वेगळे असतात. तर यासाठी अर्बन हेल्थ सेंटरच्या पेजवर कोविड सर्व्हायव्हल टिप्स, फायटिंग मिथ्स, वाचकांचे प्रश्न, साथ समजून घेताना अशा प्रकारच्या सिरीज चालू आहेत. हा कोड दिलेला आहे स्कॅन करायला. जर तुम्ही हा कोड स्कॅन केलात तर तुम्हाला त्या पेजची लिंक सापडेल. आणि त्याचप्रमाणे युट्यूबला पण बरीचशी माहिती आहे, तर तुम्ही ती माहिती वापरून आपल्या रुग्णांना माहिती देऊ शकता किंवा त्यांना पण हे वाचायला देऊ शकता. सो थँक्यू सो मच. आणि आपण सर्व मिळून नक्कीच ह्या साथीला मात करू शकू असं वाटतंय. तर अर्ली RT-PCR आणि अर्ली आयसोलेशन ह्या 2 टिप्स लक्षात ठेवा. आणि रुग्णांना हे नक्की सांगा की मास्क कधी काढायचा नाहीये. थँक्यू.
प्रिया मॅडम, मी तुम्हाला अर्ली RT-PCR आणि अर्ली तर अर्ली RT-PCR म्हणजे अर्ली टेस्टिंग आणि अर्ली आयसोलेशन ह्या ज्या 2 ह्यातल्या म्हणजे अक्षरशः अतिशय महत्वाच्या अशा ज्या गोष्टी आहेत, ज्या प्रामाणिकपणानं राबवल्या गेल्या तर पुढची संभाव्य साथ आपण आटोक्यात ठेवू शकतो, हे त्यांनी अतिशय चांगल्या पद्धतीनं सांगितलं. थँक्यू प्रिया मॅडम. याच्यानंतर मी डॉक्टर आनंद मालानींना विनंती करतो की त्यांनी क्लिनिकल फीचर्स अँड क्लिनिकल स्टेजिंग ऑफ COVID-19 याबद्दल भाष्य करावं.
Hello everyone. I will start straight away. COVID-19, a clinical diagnosis. Yeah, so we all know this wave is turning into a tsunami. It's already a tsunami. I make a statement here, don't miss the bus and head for the worst. By bus, I mean is the early diagnosis. I'm of the opinion that early diagnosis is the single most simplest intervention which can end the pandemic. This is an oversimplified statement, but very, very true. So what are the mantras to flatten the curve or reduce the case burden? The first thing I will say is test and isolate. So you have to test each and every patient and you have to isolate them. Second step will be you have to triage the patient into mild, moderate, severe and treat accordingly as per protocol. The third mantra will be you have to trace all the contacts of the patient and again isolate them. It's very most important step. And fourth step will be we have to go ahead with large amount of vaccination at the earliest. So, and Madam has already talked about the infectivity. I will say it again. The most infectious period when the disease is transmitted is -2 to +5 or +7 days. So you have to target and train yourselves to pick up patients within the above window. Yes, -2 can also be picked up. A very close contact of a patient, a family member of a patient is likely to turn positive within next 3-4 days. So you have to anticipate, then isolate him and then test him. Please educate all your patients, relatives, friends, and everyone to seek very early attention. So what are the symptoms of early disease? Common and less common. Common is fever, usually mild to moderate. There are no usually chills or rigors. there is some rhinitis, some sore throat, dry cough, headaches, myalgias, occasionally arthralgias. Weakness is usually a late symptom, maybe after 5 days. Loss of taste and smell are very, very peculiar, and the sensitivity of these symptoms is equal to or may exceed even the RT-PCR. The less common symptoms are anorexia, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, red eyes, conjunctivitis, skin rash, and many other symptoms. Some patients even have UTI as a presenting symptom. So be careful about these symptoms. So what is the duration of symptoms and how they present? All permutations and combinations are known. A fever or feverish feeling only once lasting less than 3 hours is also very, very significant. So when patient says, I had some fever 5 days back only for 1 or 2 hours, it is significant. Please don't ignore the symptom. Similarly, upper respiratory complaints which lasting for a short duration, 1 or 2 days, without fever, with fever, they are also significant. So multiple of above symptoms, they can last from short duration to long durations. You can't ignore any one of them. Symptoms of late disease, profound weakness and ill health, persistent fever after 7 days and severe myalgias, breathlessness and chest discomfort are symptoms of ill omen, persistent or new worsening of cough, new fever. So be careful if patients come with these complaints, then it's already late. So we know the differences in this wave. The atypical symptoms are slightly more than last year. Younger population is affected very severely this year. 30 to 50 age group is affected very severely. We are seeing patients landing up with severe hypoxic respiratory failure and even dying. RT-PCR negative COVID is very common. This may be due to variants. So patient has typical symptoms, his rapid test is negative, his RT-PCR is negative, still he is having symptoms, then maybe you can go for a CT scan ahead and then which can pick up the COVID. The journey from SpO2 of 96 to 16 has become very, very fast. Maybe patient can land up with severe respiratory failure within the first week itself. So be careful. So what are the key observations which we all have made over last 1 year? Typical symptoms not always present. So you don't need all the symptoms, don't need cough, respiratory symptoms to diagnose COVID. It can present with anything. The denial mode is the most dangerous thing, which is pushing us to the brink of severe wave. It is still very much on. Everyone, including patients, our own friends, our relatives, and even few doctors are still in denial mode. They will try to manipulate symptoms in such a way as not to be perceived as COVID. They will bring up with various theories. Symptoms are very much masked by use of NSAIDs, nimesulide, steroids. These are being rampantly used by patients over the counter and even many doctors. Please avoid using NSAIDs, nimesulide, steroids in any case of any fever. Just use simple crocin or paracetamol. Any fever is COVID unless proved otherwise in these days. Any fever. Dengue, chikungunya, influenza, swine flu, they are absolutely absent this year. There are a few cases of dengue this year, but majority of cases are of COVID. Please dump the Vidal test. This has become the most test which is abused by everyone. Typhoid is a very rare disease nowadays in our area. I have seen only one patient of typhoid over last 1 year, only one patient. But positive Vidal thing is very, very common in low titers. It is usually false positive. So don't blame the fever on the typhoid fever and treat with monosafe and IV fluids. Most dangerous thing. Any upper or lower respiratory symptoms with or without fever or dyspnea is COVID unless put otherwise. Any weakness, just weakness is COVID unless put otherwise. Please remember, weakness is a very important symptom. Any GI complaints should be looked upon as COVID. Any breathlessness with any of the above symptom is severe COVID. Please remember, severe COVID. If you inquire repeatedly using different words, all will give a history of fever on 1 to 2 occasions few days ago. You have to inquire repeatedly using different words. If you inquire by using concern, they will say yes. If you say fever, they will say no. They will attribute their symptoms to anything: stress, traveling, heat, rain, environment. Rather, they will begin with these words and try to bias you. Please be careful of these symptoms and words from the patient. Similarly, they will attribute the respiratory complaints to cold drinks, grapes, buttermilk, etc., and GI complaints to some change of food, some function. Please dump all those patients' theories and go for the test. My sincere request to all of you. Late diagnosis is worse for all. Late diagnosis as Madam has shown you, leads to increased spread in a geometric progression. Late diagnosis means aggravation of disease in the particular patient. Many patients are reaching with saturation below 80% because of ignorance and maybe happy hypoxia. Such patients, very difficult, they will survive. Many patients reach it in a gasping state. They just cannot survive. Remember, this can be prevented to a large extent. Please use all your efforts to educate and pick up disease early. So how do we stage the disease? It is staged by various terms. It is using we call it stage, we call it groups, we call this mild, moderate, severe. I think we should focus on the groups. Group will be easy to remember and understand. So what is group A? Group A is asymptomatic positive. Never had any symptoms. He was just tested as a contact of patient and he tested positive. So this needs only home isolation and probably nothing else. So what is group B? Symptomatic positive without any comorbidity. Any symptoms, as we discussed, patients are not very sick, symptoms are very mild, vitals are normal, oxygen saturation, walk test, all are negative. This we can manage by home isolation and mild disease protocol. So group C is again symptomatic positive with any of the following comorbidities: diabetes, blood pressure, asthma, age more than 60, chronic kidney disease, obesity, and immunocompromised state. Symptoms are maybe mild, same as in group B, but these are high risk patients. Even though mild, this needs very careful and frequent monitoring at home isolation or CCC and a mild disease protocol. Group D, it's a moderate disease, pneumonia without respiratory failure. Pneumonia you can see on X-ray or CT. SpO2 is here always more than 93 on room air. Respiratory rate is less than 24. These patients anytime can reach stage 2B or further. So these need strict monitoring and home treatment or at CCC, and if required, admission. Group E is pneumonia with respiratory failure. By respiratory failure, I mean the SpO2 has dropped to 93 or below on room air. The respiratory rate is more than 24. This straight away need admission in the wards to begin with. Group F is severe disease. This is pneumonia with respiratory failure with SpO2 below 90, with or without sepsis, shock, ARDS, organ dysfunction. This needs straight away admission into the ICU. And this is the category of patients we are receiving on a daily basis. This we have to prevent. We have to diagnose in stage A, B, C, D. What are the red flag signs when you are managing patients at home isolation? These are signs of concern and to be watched while treating mild to moderate disease, that is group A to group D. Persistent high fever and myalgias, fever coming back after 5 days or 7 days, myalgias coming back after 5 or 7 days are very, very important. They may indicate early cytokine storm. Pulse more than 120, respiration more than 24. These are red flag signs. A positive walk test we will discuss afterwards. Breathlessness, even without no fall in saturation, should be taken with a serious concern. Hypotension and profound weakness also are red flag signs. So you have to observe for all these things while you are in touch with your patients. What is walk test? It's a very simple test to unmask hypoxia. The 6-minute walk test is used to unmask hypoxia and most important for triaging. Just a patient will need to have a pulse oximeter at his home. Patient should measure his baseline oxygen saturation and pulse rate. Then he should walk for 6 minutes into his room at normal speed. No need to jog or run. Recheck pulse oxygen saturation and pulse rate after walking for 6 minutes. An absolute drop of 3% from baseline or SpO2 dropping anytime below 93 is significant and positive. So patient saturation is 98% at rest, and if it comes down to 94% or even 95%, this is indicative of early hypoxia. So please be careful. Even in this case, 95% we can consider as hypoxic. Any disproportionate increase in heart rate or respiratory rate, dyspnea, dizziness can be taken as positive despite normal saturation. So you have to observe for some other things plus pulse and oxygen saturation. Positive walk test means patient is worsening and needs immediate attention or admission. In an elderly patient with some problems, you can use a 3 minutes walk test instead of 6 minutes. So this is a very simple test. You have to learn yourself. You have to educate each and every patient of COVID you are managing for this walk test. They have to perform this test several times, at least 3 times a day. and most important after day 6. Day 6 to day 12 are most important days in a patient. So we will go back to the timeline. So identifying day 1 of infection is most important. Day of first symptom is day 1 and not day of PCR report or CT scan report. This is a very common mistake. So when if patient has had a fever 7 days ago, only for 1 or 2 days, then he was okay for 5 days, then again he's having cough now. So he is in 8th day. So day of cough is not first day. Day of fever is first day. Any symptom which comes first is the first day. Please remember. Patient is most infectious from -2 to +5 to 7 days, up to 10 days in some cases, or more in certain cases who are very severe. They can be infected up to 14 or 21 days. But common -2 to +7. Day 1 to day 9 is viremic phase. Antivirals work best in this period. So this is again important. You should not miss this period. Day 7 to 14 is inflammatory phase. Major complications like pneumonia, ARDS, cytokine storm syndrome are expected in this phase. Day 14 onwards is a recovery phase for mild to moderate disease. For severe disease, it may extend to some days. So once your patient has crossed 14 days and is stable, mostly he is through. So what is the take-home message? Early diagnosis is the key. Keep very, very high index of suspicion. Dump the patient's version of theories and go for the test. Negative rapid antigen test is not negative. Go for RT-PCR. Remember the mantras: test and isolate, triage and treat, trace and isolate, and vaccinate the masses. Group A, Group B, home quarantine and treatment, family physicians can very well manage. Group C and Group D, better to refer to physicians. And Group E and F, straight whether to go to any COVID hospital without waiting. So I'm closing with a very optimistic statement. If all the cases all over the world are accurately diagnosed within the first 2 days of symptom onset and are isolated along with their contacts, the pandemic should end within a month or 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Malan. About the diagnosis, clinical diagnosis history, and why the day 1 is also important for the diagnosis of these cases and management of these cases. Now, once we suspect that there is a case, then what investigation we should do? I will proceed with the investigations. GP COVID investigations. Now, which investigation we should do once we suspect the case of the COVID? Now, nothing else. As Malani sir rightly told, suspect each and every symptom as a COVID, because at this pandemic and during this period, we have to suspect each and every symptom as a COVID. What first and most important is swab. Madam has told about the details about the swab. The rapid antigen will give you the early diagnosis. The rapid antigen positive is considered as positive, but the rapid antigen negative in a symptomatic case is not negative. I will repeat this sentence. Rapid antigen negative in symptomatic case is a not negative case. The RT-PCR is done with the oropharyngeal swabs and nasopharyngeal swab. RT-PCR test is positive in 60 to 70% cases. In oropharyngeal or nasopharyngeal swab, it means that 30 to 30 negative with the RT-PCR. Means the patient is having disease, his rapid antigen can be negative, even RT-PCR can also be negative, even his CT can also be doesn't show any score. But if the patient has symptom, we have to consider it as a COVID and we have to proceed it. The day one of symptom or the consultations of day one for during the first week, we should do the basic investigations. We must do the CBC, patient's renal function test, SGPT, sugar levels, CRP, and D-dimer levels. We have to repeat these investigations after the 5 days or the start of the second week of illness. I'll go each investigation separately. In the CBC, we have to look for his WBC count. For the first wave, we used to see or third day of the illness, but now during this second wave, we are noticing that decreased TLC count is maximum on the 7th day of illness. What I most importantly look for is the lymphocytes. In the lymphocytes less than 10 or near about 10 is a very severe sign. We have to consider this case as a high risk case. Urgently, immediately, better to get it shifted to the or admitted to a hospital. If we suspect the lymphocytes less than 10 or near to the 10, there is thrombocytopenia, but thrombocytopenia is not that marked as we are seeing in the dengue cases. Another most important finding is the red cell distribution width. It said that it is more than 14.5, it's a high risk case. We have to look for the BSL because most of the cases in the COVID are diagnosed with the diabetes. They have raised BSL and we need the proper BSL control. That's why we need to see the BSL. We need to look for renal function test and SGPT because these elevated enzymes is the contraindication for the treatment for the antiviral, starting the antivirals. And markers, I will prefer to do only 2 markers. First is CRP and another is D-dimer. Even the first day of consultation, I will not go for D-dimer if it's in the first 2 to 3 days of illness. CRP generally correlates with the disease. If the CRP is higher, the disease is severe. What is important in CRP is it becomes severe and CRP is decreasing trends, then disease is improving. For what we have to look for is a CRP is decreasing or increasing trends. If CRP is more than 50, above 50, we have to be cautious that this case can fall into the high risk case. We need close follow-up, close monitoring of saturation of these cases, those whose CRP is above 50. And the D-dimer, if the D-dimer is more than 2000 microgram or more than 2 milligram, then it's a high risk case. We have to best get admitted at the hospital. D-dimer more than 5000 microgram or 5 milligram, more than 5000. When we have to repeat the investigation, we have to repeat it at the mid of the second week and end of the second week, or we have to repeat the investigations alternate day in CRPs are higher, who has comorbid conditions, whose D-dimer is higher, lymphocytes are around, suppose it comes to the 17, 18, and we need to the follow-up closely. Then we have to do the alternate day these tests. Now I come to the most important test and very misused test is HRCT chest. It takes around 5 to 6 days for the disease to reach the lungs. It's never reached the lung in the first week of illness. So never do the HRCT chest in the first week. Prefer to do the HRCT chest in the second week of the illness. HRCT chest is not needed in each and every patient. We are seeing many cases, many contacts directly coming without swab test along with their HRCT reports. If suppose patient saturation, walk saturation is normal, his markers are normal, he has almost nil symptoms, he is improved very good clinically and symptomatically also, blood lymphocyte count is very good, CRP is not that raised, then it's not needed to do HRCT chest in these patients. Many patients Score the mentioned in the HRCT test is many times very misleading. The score is calculated as according to the lobes. They consider 26% to the 49% of lobe involvement as is considered in one lobe as a 2 score. So one lobe involvement 27% and one lobe involvement 48%. It's almost double the involvement, but the score is considered a 2 for the simple, only 2 for that lobe involvement. If the score is 13, we have seen the cases 13 score can be easily improved, but 11-10 score can be mortality. So score, we must not look for the score. Many times scores are misleading. We need to see the lesions to judge it's a time and how are the lesions are there and how the lung involvement is there. We have to guess around 40% lung involved is there, 60% in lung involvement is there, apex are spared. We have to judge how much lung is involved as a percentage wise and not as a score wise. It's important to note that we have to note the lung involvement in the percentage wise is a better rather than the score. There is no need to do the repeat HRCT unless and until we are suspecting some bacterial infections or some additional complications of the disease. If you ask me when you will prefer to do the HRCT test, if you want the perfect score and perfect lesions of the lungs, then best time to do the HRCT test is 9th or 10th day of illness. At that time, the lung involvement is the maximum for these cases. So take home message from this is the swab is most for higher ones. Lymphocytes, keep watch on lymphocyte. Don't miss patient's renal function test, BSL, SGPT. CRP more than 50, D-dimer more than 2000 are high risk cases. HRCT is not needed in each and every patient and never do HRCT test in first week of illness. If you ask me only one test, I will prefer clinical impression and saturation monitoring rather than any investigations because it is most important. We have to look for the patient's clinical impression. As Malani sir rightly told, baseline tachycardia or tachypnea, 6-minute saturation are most important things rather than any investigations. If you ask me one test, lymphocyte matches with the disease severity. Lymphocytes are too low, the disease is too severe. For the all general practitioners, all are the first line warriors of these battlefields. Our ICU rush depends a lot on you. If you pick up and manage patients early, most of the load on the ICUs will be decreased. Let's fight against this deadly virus unitedly and beat this pandemic. Thanks to give me opportunity to speak with you. Now I'll hand over to the Somnath. He will take over in short about the management of mild up to moderate cases. Few minutes, just brief from the.
थँक्यू अविनाश अँड थँक्यू आनंद मालानी. मला वाटतंय की याच्यामध्ये आपल्या लेवलला जनरल प्रॅक्टिशनर लेवलला काही जे मिसकन्सेप्शन्स असतील तर ती या दोघांच्या व्याख्यानानंतर प्रेझेंटेशन नंतर ती दूर व्हायला काही हरकत नसावी. कारण बेसिकली आपल्याला याच्यामध्ये अपडेट राहणं गरजेचं आहे आणि त्या अपडेशन साठीच आपण हे बैठका किंवा झूमच्या द्वारे कॉन्फरन्सिंग करून विविध फॅकल्टीज कडून आपण त्याचं तुमच्यापर्यंत ती माहिती पोहोचवण्याचा प्रयत्न करत असतो. याच्यामध्ये आम्ही हे सगळं रेकॉर्डिंग करत आहोत आणि याचं युट्यूबवर तुम्हाला आम्ही उपलब्ध करून देतो, त्याची लिंक पण देतो. त्यामुळे ज्यांना जॉईन होता आलेलं नाही, देअर वॉज सम टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लेम, त्याच्यासाठी मी तुम्हाला सॉरी म्हणतो. कारण याच्या जरी असं असलं तरी डॉक्टर अरुण कोळींना माझा मेसेज राहील की याचं आम्ही रेकॉर्डिंग करून तुम्हाला युट्यूबवर अपलोड करून त्याची लिंक पण पाठवतो, ती तुम्ही लिंक शेअर करा. त्यामुळे यातलं आता झालेली सगळी चर्चा सगळ्या डॉक्टरांना उपलब्ध होऊ शकेल. थँक्यू. मी आता डॉक्टर सोमनाथ मगदुमांना विनंती करतो की त्यांनी आपला टॉपिक सादर करा.
थँक्यू सर. Good afternoon, everybody. I will be talking about management of COVID-19, particularly in mild and moderate cases. All general practitioners form a they form a very big part of healthcare delivery. And in fact, if you look at the society, their first level of contact is general practitioner. But when it comes to a COVID pandemic, all general practitioner OPD is basically a non-COVID setting. So ideally, treating a COVID-19 patient in this setting is not valid. But for all obvious reasons, you know that you are going to face COVID-19 patients. Patient may come to you and disclose the COVID-19 report later on, or maybe you are yourself posted in some COVID-19 OPDs. So treatment of COVID-19 patients, the general idea is very important for all general practitioners. And one big part is a COVID suspect. Now, it's obvious that you all are already seeing all these COVID suspects. And as Malani sir has told you, the COVID suspects are very common, and detecting them, finding them is very important. And these suspects, they should not be missed. And each and every suspect should be sent to a test, that is particular rapid antigen test. And if it comes negative and the suspicion is high, and particularly presenting with all patients presenting with all symptoms, doing a RT-PCR is very important. Now, if a patient is of COVID-19, it is always better to refer the patient directly to a hospital which caters care to a COVID-19 patients. Now, let's come to the management of COVID-19 patients. Okay, this has already been discussed. The classification of patients on clinical features, as sir has told. What is important in this is particularly the triage. As I said that looking at the clinical features and picking up the suspects is important. More important thing along with this is triage. A patient who has come to you with just a mild symptoms and you are suspecting COVID-19, you will send the patient for rapid antigen test. The report comes negative, you still suspect, and you send the patient for RT-PCR. Now it will take for 1 or 2 days, and you just give supportive treatment to the patient. This is okay with all mild cases. But if a patient has come to your OPD with all serious kind of symptoms, particularly breathlessness, hypoxia, or some resting tachycardia, or some red flag signs, it is not the routine standard approach which you should follow. So these patients should be directly referred to a hospital. So the triage of patients in the OPD is very important. Now, as sir has told you, depending on the clinical feature, the patient can be grouped into asymptomatic, mild and moderate and severe cases. Now, when it comes to the treatment part, our state task force has classified the patient into stages, which you have already seen, and further into groups each stage. So stage 1 deals with mild symptoms, asymptomatic and mild. Stage 2 deals with moderate cases, and stage 3 is severe cases. So stage 1, which is catering the mild cases, it's a very big stage. So many patients will fall in this group. Like you know that almost 80% cases will have mild symptoms or will be asymptomatic. So this is further divided into 3 stages, that is totally asymptomatic, that is group A. Group B is mild symptoms without comorbidity, and group C is mild symptoms with comorbidity. And stage 2 is moderate disease, and moderate disease includes the patients with pneumonia, all patients with pneumonia with or without hypoxia. Now without hypoxia is stage 2A, and with hypoxia is stage 2B. Now these are the patients which you are likely to see in your OPD. All the severe cases, they will be directly going to the institutes, or you may have referred those patients to institute, and they will progress further into the severe diseases. Okay, now I will be talking about different treatment strategies for various groups. Now this will include various drugs, their dosages and their durations. But for all practical purposes and even for theoretical purposes, see, there are many drugs which have been tried and which have been tested for COVID-19. And all these drugs, most of the time, are based on the observational studies. Now, these are not very perfect studies. And even in these studies, it has found that these drugs, they don't have any mortality benefits. Like it is said that all therapies except steroids have not shown any benefit in randomized controlled trials on mortality, but have shown some benefits either on viral clearance or recovery time or length of stay in ICU or hospital, which are the endpoints of the COVID-19 therapy. So if you look at the various protocols, the AIMS protocol will differ a little bit from your Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This protocol will differ a little bit from our state protocol, and the different state protocols, they will differ from each other. Even if you look at the international levels, the WHO treatment guidelines, they will differ a little bit from CDC guidelines, and it goes on. So no one knows what is the perfect treatment except steroid, which has proven their role. So there will always be little bit of differences. Now, whatever we are following are the state guidelines, the guidelines given by the state task force. Okay, now coming to the stage 1, as it is said, these patients are basically asymptomatic patients, but they are just tested positive for COVID-19. They are just tested because as a part of contact tracing. Now these are basically contacts who are asymptomatic. They are tested because they had a close contact and they came positive. Now what to do with these patients? Now investigations, it is always better to do baseline routine investigations, which we call it as CBC, RFTs, blood sugar, LFT, and ECG. Now why to do this? This will always serve as a baseline. Like you can find a HB of XY whatever, and later on it will serve as a baseline. So if it's decreasing, you know the baseline and what is happening the next. And also you can pick up some diseases with this investigation. Like a patient who is not diagnosed diabetes till now, you can find a raised blood sugar in this patient. So before the patient gets symptomatic, you can treat this whatever deviations from the normal are present. Now where this patient you can admit, home isolation is always the better option. But if a particular home isolation facility is not available, they can be admitted in an isolation ward. The treatment, it consists just supportive, and as these patients are not asymptomatic, you can just give them vitamin C 1000 mg per day. It can be 500 mg BID or tablet zinc 50 mg per day and vitamin D 60,000 stat. Now, most important part is monitoring in these patients. As these are asymptomatic, treatment per se, particularly specific treatment has no role, but most important is monitoring, because these are asymptomatic patients and now or then they may develop symptoms. Now, picking up these symptoms is very important. So most important part in this asymptomatic patients is monitoring the symptoms, particularly the body temperature and oxygen saturation. Okay, coming to group B. Now these are symptomatic patients. So these are mild symptomatic patients, but they don't have any comorbidity. So they are basically young, healthy persons, but having some URTI symptoms and who have tested COVID-19 positive. Now they again should be tested with all routine investigations. Along with this, a chest X-ray should be done to rule out a pneumonia, because if they do have pneumonia, X-ray pickups it, they fall into the group D or group E. So routine investigation and chest X-ray is important. A baseline ECG is also important. The admission, they can be also put into isolation ward, or they can be also home isolated. Now treatment, the recent most guidelines, they suggest two treatment options. One is budesonide inhaler, which is given in the form of metered dose inhaler, 2 puffs, that is 800 microgram twice a day for 7 days, and colchicine, which is 0.5 mg BID for 3 days, followed by 0.5 mg OD for 27 days. Along with this, the other vitamin C, vitamin zinc, and vitamin D should also be given. Now, the budesonide, we have used it since a long time for COPD and asthma. You all have been very accustomed to it. Now, previous studies with budesonide have showed that, in fact, the budesonide used in asthma and COPD is associated with more prevalence of pneumonia and more prevalence of upper respiratory tract infection in this patient. But all these studies before the COVID era were done on the rhinoviruses. Now, with the onset of COVID era, it has been found that, in fact, the budesonide inhaler in a mild disease is protective to the patient. And colchicine, again, this is a very old drug. You all have been using it, particularly in the gout. It is very well tolerated with standard doses. Now again, during the COVID area, it has been found to be very effective. So budesonide and colchicine are the new drugs, particularly in the mild cases. Now baseline ECG should be done for QTC monitoring in these patients. Now again, monitoring of the symptoms, body temperature and oxygen saturation is very important. Okay, now coming to the next group. Now these are again symptomatic patients. They have mild symptoms, that is URTI, but they do have some comorbidity like diabetes, hypertension, COPD, renal diseases, ischemic heart disease. They may be very obese, or even all persons above 60 years of age. Now these patients must be investigated with all routine investigations. Inflammatory marker, that is CRP, serum ferritin, D-dimer and LDH is must in these patients. They will serve as a baseline, as I have said, and along with this, if any of these inflammatory markers is increased, it can indicate that those patients need more monitoring as they are heading a path toward the severe disease. Now, if a QT prolongation is seen in these patients, because these patients with comorbidity like diabetes, they are very likely to have some electrolyte imbalances, which can lead to the QT changes. So if the QT prolongation is present, it should always indicate a daily checking of serum electrolytes. And if at all there is some electrolyte imbalance present, it should be corrected. Now, site of admission, these patients can be admitted in isolation ward. Again, treatment part is same for these patients. Budesonide inhaler puffs 800 microgram twice a day. Tablet colchicine 0.5 mg BID for 3 days, followed by 0.5 mg OD for 27 days, and the other vitamins. Now, along with this, most important part is treatment of the comorbidity, whatever they are suffering from. A patient of diabetes must have their sugars, which must be optimized. A person of hypertension, his blood pressure must be optimized. A person of CKD, his creatinine level must be monitored. So monitoring and treatment of the comorbidity, whatever the patient is having, is very important. In these persons, the atherosclerotic risk factor is very high. So thrombotic diseases like myocardial infarction, stroke is very common in this patient. So you must specifically look for D-dimer and ferritin. And if at all it is increased, low molecular weight heparin prophylactic dose is very important. Now coming to a moderate disease, that is stage 2. Now stage 2A is basically person having a pneumonia. So this is not URTI, this is LRTI. So lower respiratory tract involvement, and not only bronchi, involvement of lung parenchyma in the form of pneumonia, but those without respiratory failure. Now again, all these patients must have a baseline routine investigations. Of course, all inflammatory markers in the form of CRP, ferritin, D-dimer, LDH as a baseline. Serum electrolytes in the form of calcium and magnesium. These patients should be admitted in the isolation ward, and if at all some red flag signs are present, they should be admitted in ICU. The treatment again consists of budesonide and colchicine. Other option is giving favipiravir. Favipiravir we were using in the mild cases, but now the latest guidelines, they recommend favipiravir for the moderate cases, that is patients of pneumonia without respiratory failure. So favipiravir is given in the form of 200 mg 9 tablet, that is 1800 mg twice daily on the day 1, followed by 800 mg, that is 4 tablets of 200 mg twice daily for next 14 days. So along with this, a prophylactic, I can't say prophylactic, but an empirical antibiotic in the form of ceftriaxone should be given, because these patients are having pneumonia. So a community acquired pneumonia with streptococcus pneumonia is also common. So giving an antibiotic in the form of ceftriaxone is justified. So coming to the group D, that is stage 2B. These are the patients having pneumonia with respiratory failure. Even these patients, they fall in the moderate case for the staging. They are basically belong to the severe cases when it comes to the clinical classification. So these patients basically belong to the ICU with intensive care and intensive management. All the investigations with all inflammatory markers along with ABG, CPKMB, troponin I and IL-6 is indicated. These are hypoxic patients. So frequent monitoring is very important. Now, most important part of treatment in this patient is oxygenation, because these are hypoxic patients and oxygenation supportive treatment is very important. Now, the oxygen therapy depends on the level of hypoxia. The oxygen therapy can be given in the form of nasal cannula, mask, non-rebreather mask, HFNC, CPAP or mechanical ventilation. CAR protocol, that is continuous awake repositioning protocol, is very important. Now, two most important drugs can be added in this patient. These are injection remdesivir and steroids. The injection remdesivir can be given in the form of 200 mg IV OD on the day 1, followed by 100 mg IV OD for the next 4 days. And steroids are also very important because, as I have said, steroid is the only drug which has showed any effect in the mortality of patients of COVID-19. So methylprednisolone or injection dexamethasone can be given. Now tocilizumab is an optional drug which can be given if cytokine storm is suspected clinically. Now again, antibiotic coverage in the form of piperacillin tazobactam is indicated in these patients, which can be given in full therapeutic doses. Okay, that's all. Treatment part is considered for mild cases. I think you can just leave the last part, that is patients of pneumonia and hypoxia, which in fact needs ICU care, and all other further before that, that group mild cases is very important. Okay, I would like to hand over to Dr. Malani sir for the next lecture.
So we will talk about frequently asked questions about COVID vaccination. So these are the questions you will be asked by your patients, your friends, your relatives, and everyone. And many of the questions you may not be knowing the answer. So these are very common scenes in our day-to-day practice and what we should do. As I told earlier, vaccination is very important, the most important mantra to prevent. It might not halt the second wave, but it will definitely shorten or prevent third and fourth waves. So we have to encourage vaccination in a large way. So let us start with, it is a short talk with few questions. So is COVID vaccine overall safe? Yes, it is a safe vaccine. So far, no major adverse effects in large numbers. Is COVID vaccine of any make effective? Yes, it is effective. It is supposed to be 100% effective in preventing death due to COVID. Unfortunately, few deaths among medicals have been reported, but this is a very low number. The vaccine is highly effective in preventing serious disease, more than 90% cases. Moderately to highly effective in preventing symptomatic COVID. It is from 60 to 80%. This is not very effective in preventing asymptomatic COVID. So why this paradox? This is a paradox. Why this paradox? So vaccine is overall 70% effective. That means the remaining 30% will develop disease despite vaccination, and mostly asymptomatic or mild disease. Without vaccination, these patients may have progressed to a very severe or more severe disease. So we say that vaccine is not effective in preventing asymptomatic COVID. Exceptions are there. Some variants like South African variants can expect the antibodies induced by vaccine. So vaccine is effective, and we have to encourage vaccination on a large scale. Can I get COVID after vaccination? Yes, as we discussed in previous slide, you can get COVID after vaccination because it is 70% effective. Remember, at least 3 to 4 weeks are required to acquire partial immunity after the first dose, and 2 to 3 weeks after the second dose to acquire full immunity. So you are vulnerable in the above period. Can I get COVID due to vaccine? No. We hear many cases getting COVID immediately in the post-vaccination period. मी कालच लस घेतली, मला ताप आला, नंतर खोकला सर्दी आलं वगैरे. But these are chance associations. These patients were already in incubation when they took vaccine. So vaccine cannot induce COVID, but COVID is possible during the first week as they were already in incubation. Can I dump the mask and distancing after vaccination? Not at all. We have to continue till the pandemic ends. Nobody is safe till everyone is safe. Can vaccination halt the second wave? As I discussed, no, it will reduce the burden in the third wave. I am suffering from diabetes or multiple medical conditions. Should I take vaccine? Of course, yes. In fact, these are the patients who deserve the vaccine the most. And what I see in practice and what you see in practice is exactly opposite. Patients with medical conditions are avoiding due to wrong concepts, the WhatsApp University and some wrong concepts. We have to change them. So we have to encourage vaccination in a large proportion. Diabetes, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, asthma, COPD, malignancy. These are high risk patients. They need the vaccine most. So you have to choose your patients wisely. You have to convince your patients to take vaccination. My family member is suffering from chronic CNS problem and practically is not ambulatory. Should he be given the vaccine? Yes, he should be given the vaccine. These patients, they will not be able to follow COVID appropriate behavior, so they need the vaccine. What if pregnant or lactating woman? As per guidelines, it is not recommended, but it is said to be safe. Can use if benefits exceed risks, like in healthcare worker, somebody is a doctor, somebody is a medico, somebody is a nurse. Then after proper counseling and consent, you can use vaccine even in pregnancy. What about patients suffering from HIV, hepatitis B or C? These patients can take vaccine. This is not live vaccine, so it is not a problem in HIV. But immune response may not be optimal, may be lower, but still there is no harm in taking vaccine. What if I'm suffering from autoimmune diseases like RA, SLE, any other? These patients should take vaccine. It is safe to take vaccine. I've seen many patients of RA, SLE. They are being told to avoid the vaccine for some reasons. I don't know. So we need to change the concept. What if I'm on steroids and immunosuppressants? These patients should take the vaccine, should not avoid. The immune response may be lower, but vaccine should not be avoided. Preferably dose of steroids should be Viceron 20 milligram or below per day. If they are on methotrexate, they need to stop it for 3 to 4 weeks after the dose, but you have to consult their doctor before this. Avoid vaccine immediately after rituximab. You have to wait for 4 weeks. So these are very rare drugs which are being used. So you do not bother about this at this moment. What if I'm on aspirin clopidogrel? This is a very, very common scenario. Many of the patients, diabetic, hypertensive, cardiac, will be on these two drugs. All patients, they keep on phoning and asking what to do about these drugs. So you need not stop aspirin or clopidogrel during vaccination, not at all needed. Please ask your patients to continue the drugs and take the vaccine. What if I'm on warfarin acetrom? So even this is not absolute contraindication. What will maximum happen? There is a risk of muscle hematoma after intramuscular injections. So you can check the patient's INR. If INR is below 2.5, you can safely vaccinate. You can use a small needle, number 26 or below. You have to ensure a local compression for an extended time, maybe of 5 to 7 minutes at least. In case of newer anticoagulants like dabigatran, you can stop for 2 to 3 days if the risks of stopping are not much. Otherwise, you can continue the drugs, take the vaccine, and go for local compression. What if I am going a planned surgery? Then this patient should get vaccinated at least 2 weeks before or postpone surgery by 2 weeks. Avoid for at least a week after surgery, because even vaccine will again cause fever, headaches, and myalgia. So it will be difficult to see what has happened after in the post-op period. So avoid a week after surgery. What in case of cancer? Yes, cancer patients can also take the vaccine. There are some exceptions. So you have to consult the medical oncologist before giving the vaccine. Post-chemotherapy, severe neutropenia, post-bone marrow transplant should wait for a good neutrophil count. So in this case, you might refer your patient to the medical oncologist or physician for the vaccine. This is again common scenario. In cases of asthma, food allergy, drug allergy, these patients can also receive the vaccine, but in appropriate settings like a big hospital. Anaphylaxis to any drug previously, these patients can also receive the vaccine, but with caution and in appropriate settings. Anaphylaxis to any vaccine or its component in the past, it will be an absolute contraindication. What is the risk of clots? You must be aware this topic is a hot topic last month. Vaccine causes clot, pulmonary embolism, MI, sudden deaths. But the risk of vaccine-induced clots is very, very small, and it should not preclude you from vaccination. Please convince your patients to go for vaccination. If at all the risk is there, it is there within the first 3 weeks and very, very low. Risk of clots due to OC pills, smoking, air travel is much higher, and the risk of clots with COVID is 1,000 times higher. What if I'm suffering from DVT, CVT, or on treatment? These patients are already on anticoagulation, so can go ahead with vaccination. what if I already suffered from COVID? Still, these patients will have to undergo vaccination. You have to wait for 4 weeks after recovery. The second dose should be delayed by a larger margin in case of Covishield, as the first dose itself acts as a booster. So, despite suffering from COVID, vaccination has to be done at a delayed time. Is it necessary to monitor antibodies post-vaccination? It is not required technically to monitor antibodies post-vaccination. Please don't get disheartened if the response of antibodies is poor. Your cell-mediated immunity is still at work. And please don't be complacent if the response of antibodies is very high. Even the immunity-evading mutants are at work. So you still have to continue using the same precautions after vaccination. What about alcohol? There are no clear guidelines, not an absolute contraindication. Logically speaking, alcohol is an immunosuppressant, so better to avoid for a few weeks post-vaccination. Thank you. Now we can take some questions and answers. Unmute. Any questions you can ask? I can read one question. What about ulcerative colitis patients on mesalamine? They take the vaccine? Yes, of course they can take the vaccine.
Doxy-ivermectin is a combination which is an optional thing, and again it has the same kind of evidence as we have with favipiravir, budesonide. So of course it is an option, but it is off-label. You can give it if the other options are not available.
Positive. What should we do?
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yes.
Post vaccination, if there is a rapid antigen test is positive, then what we should proceed further?
It is a COVID, of course. You can, but as you have been vaccinated, mostly it will be a mild disease. Okay.
Okay.
So the worry should be less, but this should not differ from the continuous monitoring, because of course there are more chances that you will be having a mild disease, but still moderate severe disease are also known. They are rare, but they are known. So monitoring, as we do in other patients, non-vaccinated patients, the same kind of monitoring should be present. The treatment part also should be same.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Breastfeeding.
Severity mild.
Okay. The recent most guidelines, they have suggested that breastfeeding is not basically a contraindication for vaccination. Initially, all vaccination studies, they were done in only if individuals. On all the clinical trials, they have never included the pregnant and breastfeeding mothers. But the recent most guidelines, they suggest that breastfeeding is not a contraindication for vaccination.
Okay.
Now, ecosprin and other anticoagulants, the role that has already been discussed, and COVID treatment. Treatment as such, antiplatelet basically has no role. Anticoagulant in the form of heparin is of course indicated, particularly if the D-dimer level is high. Sulfur.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Does ivermectin proves any correction in the COVID-19? Prophylaxis.
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin does
Again,
prove
it is controversial, but it has few beneficial role. So again, it has some role, but it is again not very much proved in randomized control trials. But we can think of it as an alternative treatment mode.
is it a treatment mode or a preventive mode?
There is no drug presently indicated for the prevention
Okay,
after the exposure. So only for the treatment, and for the ivermectin, it's a proven it's a action in the in vitro, but the doses required to achieve it in vivo is larger doses. There is no RCTs are still doubtful, so there is no classical that we should no recommendation that we use it either or against it. This as a supportive we can consider alternative treatment as far as
thank you.
role of methylene blue in COVID. There is no RCT proving it's a role, so no role. Role of oseltamivir fluid, no role at present. A patient recovered from COVID can need vaccine and when Malani sir has already told that after the 4 weeks of recovery. Yes, any questions, please?
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
What is the difference between convalescent plasma antibodies and post-vaccinated persons antibodies?
Hello.
Hello.
आवाज नहीं.
If the person has taken Covishield, that person will have antibodies only against S antigen. And if Covaxin is taken, there will be antibodies for different antigens, but the level of different antigen antibodies are not known. In convalescent plasma also, depending on the patient's severity, if those who have had mild or moderate disease, their level of antibodies could be less, whereas the person who have serious disease, their level of antibodies will be higher.
The main difference is when a patient had suffered from COVID and then he donates plasma, it is called convalescent plasma. Post-vaccination antibodies, it is not considered as that plasma. It is not approved for use in COVID. Any more questions?
Thank you. No.
Yes, please.
No other question, please.
Hello.
Yes.
आवाज.
येतोय आवाज येतोय बोला.
हा सर, मिथिलीन ब्लूचा काय रोल नाही का सर?
It is still not in guidelines. There are no randomized control trials. Many people are using and maybe having results as well, but there are no published trials with RCTs and they are not in our guidelines. So as a task force member, we cannot recommend that treatment at present.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
More questions? Yeah, questions, please.
हॅलो
हा.
सर, मला एक क्वेश्चन विचारायचा होता. एक लेडीज पेशंट 40 इयर ओल्ड लेडीज पेशंट आफ्टर कोविड तिला इकोस्प्रिन टॅबलेट चालू केली. त्यानंतर त्या येणाऱ्या पिरियड मध्ये तिला हेवी ब्लिडिंग झालं, तर त्याचा इकोस्प्रिन मुळे काय होऊ शकतं का?
Very unlikely that aspirin is going to cause severe bleeding. Very unlikely. It may be some other causes.
ओके. आणि पोस्ट वॅक्सिनेशन इकोस्प्रिन चालू करावं का, असं काही आहे का?
Not recommended. No guidelines. Not recommended.
ओके सर, थँक्यू.
Post-COVID has known to cause some menstrual irregularities. सो कोविडमुळं कोरोनामुळे देखील थोडासा मेन्स्ट्रुएशन वरच्या ह्याच्यामध्ये काही चेंजेस वगैरे एक्सपेक्ट होऊ शकतात त्या फिमेल्सना, जर त्या लॉंग कोविड किंवा पोस्ट कोविड मध्ये गेले असतील तर. त्यामुळे ती एक शक्यता आहे.
थँक्यू. ज्या पेशंटना लिव्हर डिसऑर्डर्स आहेत, अशा पेशंटना फॅबिपिरावीर चालू करताना काही प्रिकॉशन घ्यावीत का?
Yes, you have to see first SGOT, SGPT. If the enzymes are 3 to 5 times above normal level, you should not start.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
सगळ्या पार्टिसिपेंटचा मी आभार मानतो आणि त्याचबरोबर सगळ्या टास्क फोर्स मेंबर पैकी आज जे 4 जण आपल्याला मार्गदर्शन करण्यासाठी आले त्यांचेही मी आभार मानतो. याच्यामध्ये डॉक्टर अरुण कोळींची मला एक रिक्वेस्ट आलेली आहे की त्यांना काहीतरी बोलायचं आहे पण त्यांचा माईक काहीतरी प्रॉब्लेम म्हणजे अनम्यूट होईना झाले ते, तर आम्ही इकडून अनम्यूट करतोय. डॉक्टर अरुण कोळी बोला. डॉक्टर अरुण बोला. डॉक्टर अरुण तुमच्या लेवलला अनम्यूट करा तुम्हाला.
हॅलो
हॅलो
हॅलो आचार्य सर. हॅलो
अरुण तुमचा माईक जवळ घ्या.
हॅलो सर.
हा बोला, मोठ्याने बोला जरा.
हॅलो
हा बोला.
हा सर. साळुंके सर, पहिलं तर मी सांगली प्रशासनाचे आपले आणि आजच्या प्रमुख वक्ते डॉक्टर प्रभू मॅडम, डॉक्टर माराणी सर, डॉक्टर झळके सर, डॉक्टर सोमनाथ मगदुम सर, आपण सर्वांनी आम्हाला कोविड पेशंट मध्ये साइन सिम्पटम वरून कसे पेशंट कोविड पेशंटचे निदान करायचे, रॅट कधी करायची, RT-PCR वरून लवकरात लवकर निदान करून पेशंट कसे निदान करायचे, ब्लड इन्व्हेस्टिगेशन कधी करायचे, HRCT कधी करायचे आणि माइल्ड मॅनेजमेंट कशी करायची, ह्या सर्वांचे आपण सर्वांनी योग्य मार्गदर्शन केल्याबद्दल मी GMP पर्यंत सांगली यातर्फे आपल्या सर्वांचे मी धन्यवाद आणि आभार व्यक्त करतो सर. आणि बाकीचे प्रशासनाचे जे प्रश्न आहेत ते मी पर्सनली तुम्हाला व्हॉट्सअपवर सेंड करतो सर. त्याबद्दल आणखी एकदा
ठीक आहे.
धन्यवाद सर.
ठीक आहे. ठीक आहे, मला वाटतं आपण ही मीटिंग संपूया आता. धन्यवाद.
ओके सर, धन्यवाद.
एक अनाउन्समेंट आहे, ही युट्यूबची लिंक आम्ही डॉक्टर अरुण कोळी आणि डॉक्टर बरगाले यांना शेअर करू. डॉक्टर बरगाले जॉईन झालेले नाहीत वाटतात.
नाही सर, ती कॅपॅसिटी कमी होती ना, लोक बरेच वेटिंग
सर जॉईन आहे सर. जॉईन आहे का? हा देवपाल
आहे सर जॉईन आहे सर.
लिंक पाठवतो मी, ती लिंक शेअर करा सगळ्यांना.
हो सर, चालेल.
ओके, थँक्यू.
ओके, थँक्यू सर.
ओके
थँक्यू सर. थँक्यू.
Thank you, sir.